When you were starting that, and is it okay for me to ask questions?
Yeah.
So when you're starting that, when did you get your first feedback? Like from other people, from the other book. Like, how did you know that people like this stuff?
Well, I mean, I've been writing Femgineer, the blog, for the last 7 years. So when you're starting Olark, I was like writing about starting stuff as well. So yeah, like when I was founding engineer at mint.com, that was my first startup. I'd always wanted to write. My mom's sitting in the audience, so she knows like I've been writing stories since I was like 6. And I wanted to get back into writing because I hadn't done a lot of writing in college. So I thought, oh, like there's this thing called blogging. Maybe I'll give that a shot. And some of my other friends were also doing it. So I just jumped on the bandwagon and didn't really think anything of it. So I started writing about what I was doing, which was engineering and entrepreneurship at the time, and slowly started to develop a following. And I found that the work, or what I would write, if it was like really technical stuff, nobody would want to read about it. But if I was like, oh, I like talked to this customer and they said it was awesome or it sucked, or like they said no, people were like, oh, that's like so interesting, right? So I found that most of the stuff people wanted, at least from me, was everything that was in the context of software but business related, and they really didn't care about the technical stuff. Like I tried to create Ruby tutorials and talk about computer architecture, and they were just like, this isn't fascinating. Like tell us about the time that like some VC turned you down, or like some customer ended up giving you less money, whatever. That was more fascinating to them. So anyways, so a couple of years ago, it started to get more, and I started to get more and more interest. I started doing the course. Which actually, again, was kind of inspired by Ben because, because I said, I did something where I was like, oh, I'm going to start teaching this course, and Ben's like, oh, you should just like charge a bunch of money for the course. and then, just get like 10 students. And I was like, yeah, maybe I should just charge a bunch of money and just get like 10 students. Like, what do I need hundreds of students for at like $10, right? So my first iteration, I just used my blog and I put up an 8-week course called Lean Product Development, and I basically recruited my first class just through my blog following and through my Twitter following and nothing else. And there's like a few of my students here in the audience. And so the initial feedback was from that course, was from teaching that course, and I've taught that 5 times. I taught it at Duke University last year, and then I went and surveyed my audience because I was like, well, I've got like a pretty big following, but there's only at any given time 20 people in the course. I know it's a pretty pricey course. So maybe that's why, and sure enough, it was like, yeah, it's kind of expensive, it's a big time commitment, want something simple. So I decided like, okay, I'm gonna make a really simple product for people that I can just be like, here, everything you need to know is like in this thing. And that's where the inspiration for the book came. But a lot of the initial feedback was like from the blog. My students read the book as well. And before I started to like write out all the chapters, I was just pulling content from the coursework.
Yeah, and the reason I kind of mentioned that question, because I think like when you're starting something new and you're just trying to get it off the ground, like getting that early feedback, like getting it out there and getting feedback from people can be that extra energy you need to like make something actually happen. Like for us, we just tried to release it as quickly as possible, and it was just basically broken. Like it hardly even worked when we got our prototype out there. But the fact that people were able to use it and tell us that it didn't work meant that they actually cared a little bit enough to like, prod us into making a product that was slightly better. So don't be afraid to put something out that's broken.
Yeah, and actually I like that. You want to find the people who like either love or hate your product, that middle ground where they're like, it's like okay, I'm actually going to use this competitor solution. Like that's the worst, right? You want people to be like, oh, I love it, and it just needs to do like, not have this many bugs or whatever. But yeah, I've always tried to find the people who are, on either sides of the spectrum, because they're going to give you that valuable feedback that's going to help you improve.
Yeah, and the feedback is so powerful for you as like a product creator.
Yeah.
Or something. Just to know, like, feel like, oh, there's people there that like what I'm doing.
Yeah, even the negative feedback. Like I think when I actually started before I had the title, like How to Transform Your Ideas into Software Products, I had an older title that for a small version of the book back in October. Karen is probably the only one in the audience that remembers it. It was called like, it was something like the soft skills you need to sell software or something like that. And people were like, this is a really lame title. Like, I don't know, it's not really resonating with me. And that was valuable, right? To even get the like, hey, this title sucks or like this concept sucks. Because then I could quickly be like, okay, I'm not going to spend 4 months writing that book. I'm going to like write something else. Yeah.
Does it ever sting to get negative feedback?
At this point, no. In fact, sometimes if I get feedback that's like too positive, it's like, okay, that's not helpful. I mean, it's helpful, like, oh, great, like, good job. But at the same time, it's kind of like, okay, if I'm trying to like push the envelope here and get to the next level, it's not super helpful. I want to hear the negative feedback, but I want to hear it in a way where people can kind of pinpoint and prioritize, right? I don't want them to be like, this sucks. I want them to be like, this sucks because, I don't know, the onboarding flow is really difficult, your copy doesn't make sense, or I don't know, my employee can't use it, or my mom can't use it, whatever, right? But kind of contextualizing it is more helpful because then you can figure out, okay, who else is giving similar feedback, and then generalize it. Because the last thing you want is like all disparate stuff, right? You want to start finding the patterns and then work on the feedback that's that pattern. So yeah, I like to have sort of negative feedback that's very concrete. And I actually joke here at 500, a lot of the companies think I'm scary because I give them feedback. I'm like, this is what sucks. And like, you just need to go out and fix that stuff, right? And some people actually rise to the occasion. They're like, that's really helpful. It's like to the point, and I can make progress rather than like, good job for like trying. Like, we're not in elementary school anymore, right? Like, we're trying to push products. We're trying to, you know, make an impact. So I think it's helpful to get some of that